Everyone, and welcome to the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and the Love Is podcast. I'm excited to welcome the host of the Love Is podcast, Kim Sorrelle. Kim, how are you? And I know you're excited about our guest.
I'm doing great, Neil. Thank you. And yes, Jonathan Rosenthal. My word, you are an actor. You do a lot of things in life, I'm sure, but your acting is unbelievable. The movie, The Abandon, everyone should go see it. I was on the edge of my seat just watching the clips that I was able to watch. I can't even imagine making that film. It had to be so intense. But I just want to say, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the kind words. It means everything.
Yeah, well, it's true. You're so skilled. You've won awards. The Abandon has won awards. You've won Best Actor for it, and for a good reason. I'm curious. It must have been so intense filming that because, from what I understand, you were under a time crunch.
Yeah, we had 15 days to film a whole movie, which for those listening, typically rule of thumb is you shoot about one page a day in a script, and we were shooting anywhere from 7 to 8 pages a day on any given day. So it was beyond the emotional elements and feats that it involved as an actor. It was also just physically taxing.
That's crazy. I mean, so kind of what you're saying is basically, especially a sci-fi, you got to get it in one shot if you're doing it in 15 days, right?
In moments, there were definitely moments where it was, hey, we have two, maybe three takes on this, and we got to move on. So you got to, if you don't make this, we don't have a movie. And not to
Wow.
mention doing my own stunts, which was another level of just, you know, insanity.
Yeah, well, it's an amazing premise. Here you are just alone, no windows, no anything, cement walls around you. And the majority of the movie, it's just you. And there you are, and you're stuck with seemingly no way out. And you play the emotions of it so incredibly. I would think that playing that part had to be pretty emotionally taxing.
And in approaching the character's name is Miles. He's one of those people that he could be in a crowded room and still feel totally isolated or alone. He deals with a lot of trauma from before the war and because of the war, and it's kind of part of big hook of his character. And because of that, in order to manufacture all of that and to kind of capitalize on the short amount of time we had, I cut myself off from my friends and my family and my girlfriend at the time, which is probably why we ended up breaking up. But so I didn't talk to them for about 3 months until we wrapped shooting. And sounds extreme, sounds dramatic, but it at the time seemed like the only way that I could kind of, along with all the other chaotic elements of the shoot, really pull this all together.
So tell me the premise of the movie.
I play a soldier who is deployed in the first Gulf War, and on the battlefield, after being shot, witnesses a bright light in the sky and ends up in this space with no doors and no windows. Physical and mental feats ensue, and his only lifeline is a unknown person, an unknown caller on the other end of a satellite phone who he's able to communicate with. And together they try to discern who put them there, where they are, and how they're going to get out.
Yeah, it's so good. It is intense and it's I don't know. I just can't say enough to recommend it. Jonathan, you have a birthday coming up soon, by the way. Happy birthday in just a few
Thank
days.
you.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
welcome. You're welcome. So I'm curious about the film. Like, what are your desires? What do you want audiences to get out of The Abandon?
Well, beneath the thrilling and at times kind of gory elements of the film, I think there's a message of connection, human to human, self-reliance, and beyond that, just kind of looking at PTSD under a microscope. I think from like the wartime element of it, PTSD was something that was diagnosed, but not diagnosed in returning veterans till after the Gulf War. So in a lot of ways, this movie kind of examines under a microscope that phenomenon of soldiers that knew something was wrong with them, or knew that they were experiencing something but couldn't quite articulate it, because at the time there was PTSD, but then also there was war syndrome, and the two weren't yet married.
When you talk about, those two things, I didn't know the difference between, PTSD and wartime syndrome. I didn't know that they didn't even have the PTSD diagnosis back in the Vietnam days. So that's an interesting thing that Jonathan brought to the table.
It is interesting. And I'll tell you, Neil, I remember when people were starting to talk about PTSD, there were a lot of people kind of poo-hooing it and saying, no, there's no such thing as PTSD, and kind of get over it. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's sort of like other things that we have in life that at the time seem normal to not recognize or seem normal to do. But then later, when you find out all this stuff about PTSD and the trauma and dealing with the trauma that happens, then that it's normal to have to deal with the trauma. It's sort of like smoking on airplanes. Remember smoking on airplanes, Neil?
Right,
It
right.
was it was crazy, right? Like it used to be normal. Like we thought it was normal to smoke on this thing full of jet fuel, and you picked smoking or non-smoking, and now to think about smoking on airplanes is crazy. And now to think that PTSD was never diagnosed seems crazy, that people just had to deal with it. And look at what happened to so many of the vets.
Jonathan, I think we have you back on the line. Are you back on the line?
I am. Those damn earthquakes. Sorry.
No, that's okay. We were able to come on the question with that, so I'm going to let Kim jump to her next question. And we had a little bit of an interesting conversation. We have that. I guess. I mean, I've done so many shows, and Kim's done so many shows. We can just kind of talk about things, and we get right back to the conversation. Go, Kim, with your next
Cool.
question.
Yeah, Jonathan, we were talking about, war syndrome and PTSD, and just saying how it seems so odd now that not that many years ago, people were sort of poo-hooing PTSD and saying, oh, it's not real, it's not a thing, just kind of get over it, move on. And now, with so much that we know about trauma and about PTSD, it's hard to fathom that we were ever that ignorant about it.
100%. But also, it kind of exposes the young nature of medicine. I mean, 100 years ago, they were treating people with leeches. So if you look at the bell curve, it makes sense that we're taking these big leaps and strides in a way that in our lifetime we can look back not that long ago and go, wow, it's crazy the way we misrepresented or mistreated, but in the medical sense, treated people with serious afflictions.
And I started thinking about this more when you talk about this, is that we think that human beings can deal with trauma seriously and not give them, just say, okay, anyone who's in a really difficult, dangerous job that causes, there's trauma, lots of different sadness and different emotions, how they are able to take it home to their families. We have to come up with a better way to have more resources available for them when they do come back to civilian life or other ways. One of my clients talks about military transitions. He has a podcast called Vet SOS Podcast, and it talks about all the transition stories of veterans. So, a lot of ways we have to fix this problem by coming up with better resources. And I think you bringing this up in this interview is very important.
100%. Well, and I think the nature of it is that because now it's part of the public conversation, it makes it easier for people to ask for help. Where once upon a time, it felt like this swept under the rug sense of embarrassment when you looked at like the mentality of those generations of be a man and stick your chest out and take it on the chin and deal with it. I think that there were a lot of people out there that were afflicted that didn't know what to call it, didn't know how to ask for help with it, and were afraid to do so.
All right, Kim, go to your love question. I'm sure he has definitely some things to share about that.
So, Jonathan, I dedicated a year, a full year, to figuring out the true meaning of love. And I was in Haiti the majority of the time that I was doing it. So it was sort of like a war zone. I was there after the earthquake that killed 200,000 people. And there was a lot of trauma going on there, I got to say. But when I was figuring out love, I figured out so many things that I never knew about love, like surprising things about love. And so I'm always curious what people's definition of love is and how it plays a role in your life.
What a hard question that I'm gonna backpedal until I can think of an answer on. My my definition of love would be the connective ether and X factor in life that draws us not just to others, but ourselves and our sense of connection with the human species. And I think you can love someone on a bus whose name you don't know simply off a look. And I think you can love someone that you've known for decades. And I think it's kind of ingrained into the human being as far as part of our experience as humans is this longing to connect and this longing to see and be seen.
Great answer. Jonathan, where
Mhm.
people can check out the movie where now? What's the best place right now?
So it's in theaters from now until the 25th. It's on demand July 30th. And you can check us out on Instagram at The Abandoned Movie or on page at Johnny Kilrose, Jonny.
All right. Thanks again, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
That was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show on the Love Is podcast, guys. Take care.